Hello everybody, good evening, I'm Cosmic Claire and welcome to another one of my evening video blogs. Before I start on tonight's subject, I would like to express my profound gratitude to Malcolm Guite for all the talks and conversations I've had with him and listened to him talk about on podcasts and YouTube and stuff, which have been profoundly helpful in developing and clarifying my own ideas about a lot of these subjects that I talk about on my video blogs, but which are when expanded and generalised, are kind of universal themes that affect everybody. And I'm thinking about last night's talk. I talked at rather great length about why I thought it was wrong to put a trolleybus system through the north of Leeds. That seems a long way away from the kind of woo-woo metaphysics that I kind of like to get into, but actually it's not, because as I ended up saying at the end of the talk last night, the material world and the spiritual world have to be in harmony, otherwise they both become out of balance and meaningless. And I think this applies to practical things like trolleybus transport schemes and cities and things, as much as they do to anything. And before I made my tea tonight, I got involved in one of those Facebook exchanges where somebody disagrees with you, and I find them so... Well, it's not that people aren't trying to communicate, and that's okay, but I do find that the format is so limiting that it kind of narrows the terms of the conversation, and I have to, I suppose, confess culpability with part of that myself, in letting myself get caught up in kind of very left brain technical issues. How many people will move, and is it what's the what do they call it, cost benefit ratio analysis and all that kind of stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, ultimately that is completely irrelevant, because I'm trying to take this from really a holistic perspective about human life, and so I want to completely get away from any technical issues about how many cars will transit through Headingley, and will it be speedier and save emissions and all this kind of stuff, because I want to kind of take the focus back to big long distance, big view of this whole situation. Now, what do we have? We have what is probably the third largest city in the UK. Well, certainly the third largest city in England, and tens of thousands of people commuting to work every day. Now, one thing I hear on the internet is that a lot of people who do these commuting jobs say, well, it's kind of hell, and it's not just talking about they're getting caught in the traffic jams, just however smooth and easy the journey is. It's the kind of wage slavery that is entailed. Then that kind of links into the whole kind of banking rip-off scenario, whereby banks are creating debt, enslaving people, making them pay vastly more than the money they've kind of borrowed or basically had created out of thin air, and all this kind of stuff. So Right, standing back from this, looking at the way cities have developed. Well, obviously the cities have developed over thousands of years, some of them, and some of them over hundreds of years, but the whole concept of the city kind of dates back to about 3000 BC, 5000 years ago, ancient Mesopotamia, where these things first started to develop. A lot of accounting, bureaucracy, administration, all this kind of stuff. When you get large bodies of populations living in a sedentary way, in close contact, they've kind of been doing it at places like Çatalhöyük for a little while, before, some thousands of years, possibly even before and Uruk and these other places. But what we find that they seem to have developed into, I'm not certain Çatalhöyük was like this, because it seems to be more kind of chaotic, which is kind of, has its upsides and downsides. But we seem to have entered into rather one of the downsides of the organisation of cities. They seem to have become places for a covert slavery and thinking, kind of wanting to tap into the excellent talk that Malcolm Guite made on Tolkien and his part in the Inklings that he made last year and put up as a podcast. I'll put the link to that at the bottom. The way I'm thinking about this is cities are like kind of instruments of Saruman. I'm jumping right into the ethical meta levels of the Lord of the Rings. But anybody who knows the Lord of the Rings, obviously Saruman, one of the really, really big characters, one of the main protagonists, trying to get his view of the world. What's he trying to do? He's just like a mini Sauron. He's just trying to enslave the world to his own vision, which is like, just a kind of smaller version of Sauron's, And, I knew this line kind of by heart before Malcolm even kind of mentioned it on the podcast. Saruman, Treebeard says, Treebeard the tree shepherd, Treebeard says, Saruman, he has a mind of metal and wheels. And this equates with the modern system. The modern system is a system of metal and wheels. I can't help thinking of that wonderful sequence in The Great Dictator with Charlie Chaplin. It's years since I've seen it, but I bet it can be found on YouTube. It just popped straight into my mind because it's such a wonderful image where Charlie Chaplin gets kind of conveyor belted through the mass cogwheels of the machines. And back to another Malcolm Guite comment, which I didn't know this one, from Blake, talking about the cogs tyrannic, and this is the city. This is the city that we have now become servants. We serve and we maintain, service the machine. We are servicing the machine. The machine serves only those people who are at the top. The only people who are really free are those who control the system, who determine what the system will be like in the future, how the system develops. So they are those who are like Saruman. If Hitler was Sauron, or Stalin was Sauron, or Mao, then modern liberal economic democracy, as it presents itself, is Saruman. It's kind of more subtle, and it's more beguiling, But in the end, what is it doing? It's deforesting the surrounds of Isengard and breeding genetically modified mutants to take over the world. So this whole model is about enslavement to serve either an impersonal system or a small elite who run that impersonal system. So the corollary of this is that to make sure humans become more obedient servants, more obedient slaves who don't question, who don't want to explore their own freedom, their own autonomy, their own diversity, their own individuality, their own spiritual nature for infinite expression of joy and love. Well, you can't have that with the system. So people are hypnotized and dumbed down by, well, my pet hate, isn't it? The media, the mass media, the news channels, the game shows, the soap operas, the thousands of other mass entertainments that I don't even know or have time to think about or mention. Which take us ever further away from our humanity. Now, nonetheless, despite the fact that there have always been attempts to control and enslave humanity, nonetheless, great things have been achieved. The Italian Renaissance, literature, art, theatre, all these things, architecture, big favourite of mine, and in the olden days, communities tended to build up as kind of organic structures that were integrated with the physical environment. And from this we get kind of practical systems of wisdom like feng shui, whereby if you fundamentally, this is what it's about, is if you orient yourself towards the practical character of the land and the nature of the land, then you will be more in harmony with nature, and therefore will have a more fulfilling, balanced and complete life. So this is how the old communities developed. So when you get communities like Headingley, this is how it's developed. So what the mind of metal likes to do is come along and find some outside reason to destroy this, to change it, because it always thinks it can do better than nature. The ego mind, the mind of metal, the Saruman mind, always thinks it can do better than nature. Nature needs to be improved, perfected. You can't kind of just take time and just do, you can't just improve plants with selective breeding over many generations, explore what is possible within nature. You have to go and mess around with the genes, get inside and change these things from what they are fundamentally inside. And I've got an interesting link to put at the bottom about the history of genetic engineering, because these things so often upset the internal balances to these things. So what we have here with the kind of invasive destruction of the feng shui of evolution is a kind of mind of metal kind of transhumanist agenda, which basically sees everything there to serve the system, serve the state, serve the corporation, to allow the slaves to be channeled more easily into the slavery system, which is the modern economic system where everybody has their increasing debts they're constantly trying to service, and people have to go and do these jobs that they hate, and be entrapped and enchained and enslaved for decade upon decade, their whole life, just so that you can retire when you get to 65. Well, these days, can't even retire when you get to 65 because the pensions are all being taken away, and basically people are being turned into nothing more than robotic slave machines. And then we get into the whole cybernetic transhumanist agenda that I won't get into now, but that's just an extension where everybody thinks, oh yes, we can have endless life, but they actually become less human. So this is really what all this urban planning and transport systems that want to knock things down and move things around and interfere with people's lives, this is what it's about. It's not just about utilitarianism, it's about transforming the world into a more, technologically perfect robot system. And I just realised this evening, listening to that talk about Tolkien, is that what Malcolm Guite said is absolutely superb about letting go of the ring being the thing which releases it. In most quests, people go searching for something, to find something, to gain something. With the Lord of the Rings, it's about letting go of this thing. And what is it that this system offers us? It offers us technological control, safety, psychiatric drugs to stop us having feelings that we don't like. All these things get us away from natural reality. And I've been looking for the kind of the core interpretive meaning of the Lord of the Rings for a long time, and I kind of suddenly realised that I'd already heard this once before from Malcolm, that if we are to free ourselves from the ring-like system, the Sauron-like system, the Saruman-like control system, then we have to stop thinking like them. We have to stop thinking that technology can solve all our problems and all our lives. Technology is a great help, but it is not the answer to our human problems. Human problems need human solutions, and human solutions come from the heart. They come from feeling, they come from compassion, and they come from recognition. And enslaving people into commuting years of their lives in traffic, whether it's smooth and comfortable or whether it's traffic jams, is not the answer. It's not the answer. We have to think in terms of human solutions. We have to think about the type of society we want to create. We want to preserve the things that we have already created, and we want to grow like a tree out of those things, rather than lopping off branches of the tree that have grown and become beautiful. This is fundamentally anti-human, this idea that you can bulldoze a tsunami of a new road through a beautiful old town village like Headingley. This is a matter of reclaiming humanity. Small is beautiful. We are all human beings. We should not be seeking to build a greater system that is an even just more efficient means of enforcing and administering slavery. So that's it. My time is up for this evening, so I will say thank you, Malcolm, and thank you everybody for watching in Lakesh. Hello everybody, good evening. I'm Cosmic Claire and welcome to another one of my evening video blogs. Before I start on tonight's subject, I would like to express my profound gratitude to Malcolm Guite for all the talks and conversations I've had with him and listened to him talk about on podcasts and YouTube and stuff, which have been profoundly helpful in developing and clarifying my own ideas about a lot of these subjects that I talk about on my video blogs, but which are, when expanded and generalised, are kind of universal themes that affect everybody. And I'm thinking about last night's talk. I talked at rather great length about why I thought it was wrong to put a trolleybus system through the north of Leeds. That seems a long way away from the kind of woo-woo metaphysics that I kind of like to get into, but actually it's not, because as I ended up saying at the end of the talk last night, the material world and the spiritual world have to be in harmony, otherwise they both become out of balance and meaningless. And I think this applies to practical things like trolleybus transport schemes and cities and things as much as they do to anything. And before I made my tea tonight, I got involved in one of those Facebook exchanges where somebody disagrees with you, and I find them so, well, it's not that people aren't trying to communicate, and that's okay, but I do find that the format is so limiting that it kind of narrows the terms of the conversation, and I have to I suppose confess culpability with part of that myself, in letting myself get caught up in kind of very left brain technical issues. How many people will move, and is it what's the what do they call it, cost benefit ratio analysis and all that kind of stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, ultimately that is completely irrelevant, because I'm trying to take this from really a holistic perspective about human life, and so I want to completely get away from any technical issues about how many cars will transit through Headingley, and will it be speedier and save emissions and all this kind of stuff, because I want to kind of take the focus